I'm coming to you from the so-called backwaters of Kerala, as beautiful a place as there is on the face of the earth. Pardon me if I sigh, just remembering when I experienced this beauty for the first time. UNNI is a film directed by, he's always referred to either as simply Aravindan or G. Aravindan. His Wikipedia site characterizes Aravindan as one of the greatest filmmakers of India. Tadao Sato, the great Japanese film critic, believed that Aravindan was one of the very greatest and most important film directors.
At any gathering, the most often asked question is, according to you, which movie can be termed as the best international movie? My answer almost always is an Indian movie called Kumati. This movie is a masterpiece, and I have not seen a more beautiful movie in my whole life. Everything in the movie, the concept, the emotions, the screenplay, and the music is very pure and beautiful. It is really wonderful. I think that Aravindan San's movies must reach more people, and more people ought to know about this master director.
Aravindan, to this day, is not as well known as he might otherwise have been, partly because his career was cut short. He died at the age of 53. Actually, his wife had been ill, seriously ill, for quite a while, and he was carrying medicine upstairs to her and suffered a massive heart attack and simply died. The main reason why he's not as well known as he might otherwise have been is exactly because he was based in the state of Kerala, his native state, all the way in the deep south, the southern tip of India. Kerala has its own commercial film industry, obviously smaller than the one based in Mumbai, but nonetheless significant. The language of films made in commercial films made in Kerala isn't Hindi, it's Malayali. Although it's like Hindi, a Sanskrit-based language, it's unintelligible to Hindi speakers and doubly unintelligible to Kitty and me when we were in Kerala. As I say, it's all blah, 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 blah. Aravindan was a central figure in the golden age of independent cinema in the state of Kerala. Aravindan was one of several directors, among them the relatively well-known and quite distinguished Adore Gopal Krishnan and Shaji Karun, who started as Aravindan's cinematographer, became at some point the studio head at the Chitranjali studio in Trivandrum, the capital of Kerala, and began to direct films of his own, including an excellent documentary on his mentor Aravindan after Aravindan's death. UNNI was directed by Aravindan, and it was written and produced by Kitty and myself. We met Aravindan the first year we directed the International Honors Program in Film, Television, and Social Change. He had a film, or a dot, at the International Film Festival of India that year. We were extremely impressed, and our friend Gayatri Chatterjee, who knew Aravindan, arranged for Aravindan to speak to our students. Everybody told us that he was a visual man and not a verbal man, and was A, surprised that he agreed to speak to our students, and B, thought he wouldn't have anything to say, both of which were fortunately proved not true. He was very soft-spoken, but eloquent. And he took an interest in some of our students. And the next year, when the film festival was held in Trivandrum, Aravindan went out of his way to make sure that our students had as full an experience of Kerala as was possible. He had his right-hand man, Setu, one of the most charming and charismatic men who ever lived, show our students around, made sure that they saw places, met people, and had experiences that ordinary tourists in Kerala would not in a million years be able to have. After that program ended, Kitty and I decided to go back to Trivandrum and make a proposal to Aravindan that we collaborate on a feature film that would be loosely based on experiences of our students he had gotten to know. We would raise the money that he needed from, we hoped, wealthy investors from Kerala who lived in the Boston area. We would write a screenplay, which he would then flesh out, especially flesh out the Indian characters. The film would be in English. And we believed this would allow Aravindan to make connection with a larger audience in the West, and particularly in the United States. We knew how important, unique a film director Aravindan was. We also knew that among the International Film Festival audience, Aravindan was getting a reputation commensurate with his gifts as a filmmaker. But his films were still unknown, even to art film audiences in America. So we thought that this film could be accessible to American audiences, while at the same time being a true Aravindan film. So we wrote a treatment, simple story, gave it to him. He said he'd have to think about it, and he sent us out with Setu on a 2-day, 3-day boat trip through the Kerala backwaters. When we returned, he said yes, he wanted to do it. At one point during the shooting of UNNI, I got a telex, this was pre-email days, from an old Harvard friend, art historian, curator, and very well-known collector of Islamic art, a guy named Carrie Welch, who said he was in India with a friend, a very famous person, and would like to visit the set of UNNI, that he thought that the person he was with should meet Aravindan. But he said, I can't tell you who it is until we get there, because this person is averse to publicity. So he said, sure. And the famous person turned out to be Jackie Kennedy Onassis, who was incredibly nice and forthcoming. We had dinner with them and introduced them to Aravindan and to Setu, who placed a ring on her finger made from a hair from the tail of an elephant, and quite charmed her. Next day, the scene we were shooting revolved around an arranged marriage, which was a topic that Jackie knew from personal experience. She was very interested, but somehow it got out, and there was a story the next day in the local newspaper, and they disappeared without a trace. But we have a stack of photos. This is my favorite. There I am on the right, looking supremely oblivious. Carrie is in the far left. Jackie is in the middle of the frame. As friendly as she was, In every photograph, she looks like she's in her own private space, an effect accentuated by that broad brimmed hat. And look at how beautiful my wife Kitty is with long hair. For an event in Trivandrum honoring Aravindan on the 25th anniversary of his death. So I put together this little video which talks about Aravindan, talks about our experience working with him. It doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't dwell on the extraordinary challenges that getting this film completed entailed. Among them, when shooting was almost complete, Aravindan broke the news to us that he needed some more money, which made him as unhappy as it made us, because the only way we could get it was by bringing the National Film Development Corporation, based in Mumbai, in as co-producer. And Aravindan fiercely guarded his independence. That was a difficulty that we overcame. Another difficulty was we had a new group of students arriving in Hong Kong. The editing took place without our presence. And at that time, communicating between Hong Kong and Trivandrum was virtually impossible. So he edited partly the way he thought we wanted it. We had written a lot of voiceover narration in case he needed it for whatever reason. It was never our intention for it all to be used in the film, but Aravindan thought that we wanted him to use it, which wasn't true. So in the version he put together, there was way too much voiceover. And also, the film's opening exposed problems with the sound. We had really wanted the film to be shot in sync sound. Aravindan had never done that, and it's very difficult to do in India. In Kerala, for instance, there's virtually never a moment when there aren't 1, 2, 3 crows putting their 2 cents in. So the opening of the film at the airport, it was too long, sound is bad. It started the film off on an awkward footing. What was wonderful, beautiful in the film was to us much more important than what was problematic. But we understood that our original idea that this film would be commercially successful in the United States was not going to happen. We realized also that if we could re-edit the film, mainly take stuff out that didn't work, it would bring the film from over 2 hours to about an hour and a half. And it would go down much more smoothly with Western and American audiences. Shortly after the film was finished, Aravindan, first time he'd ever come to the United States, there was a retrospective of his work at the Asia Society. The woman who was the head of the Asia Society actually believed in Aravindan and put some of her own money into the film. I feel a little guilty thinking about that. So there was a retrospective of his work at the Asia Society in New York, and so we had a chance to see Aravindan one last time, and it was clear that he was proud of the film, but angry because due to the political situation in Kerala, the film was not chosen to be shown at the International Film Festival, which that year was going to be in New Delhi. The political situation was that Kerala is almost the only place in the world that has a history of voting communists in, and that's not that uncommon, but also voting them out. Every year or two, the Communist Party would be in power in Kerala, and then it would be out of power. And the previous year, a film made by a communist director was rejected for the International Film Festival. And so even though Aravindan was on good terms with really all parties in Kerala, he was in Kerala what Ingmar Bergman was in Sweden. Part of the Communist Party, which was then in power, felt the need to not send UNNI to the film festival. What that meant was that a key source of revenue, all Indian films chosen to be screened at the International Film Festival would receive a payment of, I think it was even then $50,000. And that would have, in one fell swoop, that would have made sure that our investors and ourselves wouldn't be left in a hole. After Aravindan died, the film as a tribute was shown on nationwide television. So India owes us money. Life is what it is. Another problem we had, by the way, was Aravindan felt it was very important that we would bring the film stock with us. The only 35mm film stock that could be purchased in Kerala was made in East Germany and was Aravindan, for whom visuals of the film were all important, felt it was inferior. That was a major expense. We bought the film stock, but then it got held up in customs. Now, Aravindan in Kerala is such a revered figure that if he had gone to whoever it was, the head person in whatever ministry was involved, he would have been able to get that film stock released right away. But Aravindan, he was such a saint. He felt if he went to the top person first, it would offend the people lower down in the bureaucracy. So he felt in principle he needed to first go to people with less power, and then gradually it would rise in the bureaucracy and the decision could be made. It worked. We did get the film stock in time, but it created a tremendous amount of anxiety for us because we had been warned by Mira Nair, an Indian-born film director who, after several documentary films, has had a quite significant, successful career. And she directed, among other films, the film about Amelia Earhart. She directed Vanity Fair. She'd been a Harvard student, and I had been the director of her senior honors thesis project. She basically warned us that what we were trying to do was impossible. We couldn't get all the permissions, we couldn't get all the rights filmed. She never, for her own career, people kept on telling her that what she was trying to do was impossible, and she never believed it. She just did it anyway, and so we were following not what she said, but her example. After Aravindan died, we knew he'd been proud of the film, even though we knew exactly how the film could be re-edited to make it go down more smoothly for Western audiences. We couldn't bring ourselves to do it. The film got shown in a number of international film festivals. It opened the Boston Film Festival. It was shown in Rotterdam. I forget the film festival in Portugal, one in Spain, some others too. It had a London-based distributor. And I had in my office at the University of Miami, I had in a large metal crate a 35 millimeter print of the film. The distributor in London had a negative. And I know that there was a print and I think also another negative in India. That's what made it possible for them to make a broadcast quality tape they could show on Doordarshan after Aravindan's death. Even though it was not possible for Kitty and me to attend the tribute in Trivandrum, marking the 25th anniversary of his death, we really wanted UNNI to be shown. We had Michael Blaine, the wonderful projectionist at the Cosford for many years, check out the quality of the print. The moment he opened the crate, he realized that it had deteriorated too much. There is a broadcast quality tape, I'm sure, somewhere in India. But after the death of P.K. Nair, founder and longtime head of the Indian National Film Archives, nobody in India seems to know where it is. We had donated a copy, now that I'm thinking about it, to Harvard. Nobody knows where that is. So the only copy that I could get my hands on, perhaps the only copy that really does exist now, was a PAL VHS cassette. I was able to clean it up a little bit, to do the re-editing that I had envisioned. My ideas after 25 years still seem to me be valid. And so, I was able to come up with a watchable version, but you can't tell from this copy just how beautiful photographically every shot of the original film was. Some of it shot by Shaji Karoon. Once he became the head of the studio, his time was limited. And so some of it was shot by Sonny Joseph, a protege of his, who was to shoot his great film, Piravi. And it's beautiful also. Aravindan's film, Kampu, or The Circus Tent, has a relatively good quality version that's available on YouTube. Several of his films are available on YouTube, most without English subtitles, and most very, very poor visual quality. It's really a shame. Kumati has been restored thanks to Martin Scorsese, but except for that, amazingly, the VHS-derived copy of UNNI is the best quality copy of an Aravindan film that's readily accessible. What follows is a tribute to Aravindan that I put together for the event in Trivandrum. I shot it in our backyard because Miami is really the only place in the continental US that looks a little bit like the South India we had fallen in love with. And as at one point I point out, it's also like Kerala, never quiet. Tribute is punctuated by traffic, by garbage truck picking up garbage, and so on. Like every true master of the art of cinema, Aravindan expressed his own way of thinking in his films. And Aravindan's way of thinking resonates profoundly with that of the American poet and philosopher Ralph Waldo Emerson, who was himself inspired by ancient Sanskrit spiritual texts. He was able to read an English translation. In turn, Emerson was a profound influence on Tagore, as Emerson's disciple Thoreau was on Mahatma Gandhi. In a famous passage, Emerson writes in his great essay Experience, quote, "Life is a train of moods like a string of beads, and as we pass through them, they prove to be many-colored lenses which paint the world in their own hue, and each shows only what lies in its focus." Emerson adds later in the essay that our flux of moods only plays about the surface and never introduces us to reality, but that there is that within us which changes not. For Emerson, our flux of moods is a mask or screen that keeps us from seeing things as they really are. Reality for Aravindan as well as for Emerson is that which changes not, the eternal, the infinite, the divine. The divinity that is in all of nature is in us, even as we exist in nature. What is unique to human nature is our inclination to deny our nature, to turn nature against itself. The central theme in Doordarshan, the first Aravindan film we had the pleasure of watching, with a group of American students we were shepherding through India back in 1987 at the International Film Festival, which that year was in New Delhi. Aravindan understood that insofar as films express themselves by their successions of moods, moods they capture, moods those moods cast over us, film too is like a string of colored beads. Every shot is a lens that paints the world in its own hue, as Emerson put it, shows only what lies in its focus, and thus cannot give us direct access to reality, to things as they are in themselves, to the divine in nature. But Aravindan also believed, perhaps more deeply than any other filmmaker I can think of, that although a film's flux of moods only plays about the surface, quite timely, I'm sitting in my backyard and a garbage truck just went by. Anyway, although a film's flux of moods only plays about the surface, film images are capable of transfiguring our ordinary experience. Aravindan's goal in all his films was to enable us at every moment to sense, in the radiance of the world captured by his camera and projected on the movie screen, the divinity of nature, the reality of that which changes not, in Emerson's words. In an Aravindan film, the beauty of the world in the frame is not simply a background to the character's actions. Equally or more important to Aravindan was that we sense the mysterious attunement of his characters, or, as may be the case, their destructive lack of attunement to the divinity of nature. This is what I believe Aravindan cinema exemplifies a way of thinking in which what he most valued in his own tradition and what Kitty and I find most precious in our American tradition come together. We sense this as the moment we saw that incredible sequence in Oregon that follows the fateful electric current from its source in nature all the way to the small Indian village that is being electrified for the first time, for better and mainly for worse. We were so impressed with the film that we invited Aravindan to speak to our students. Everybody told us, oh, he won't come, he's not a man of words, but as it turns out, he accepted our invitations, and his words were eloquent, although spoken always in that soft, gentle Aravindan voice. The next year, the film festival was in Trivandrum, lucky for us, and Aravindan and Setu graciously and generously arranged everything for our students and for us. That was when we had the opportunity to really get to know Aravindan's work and to fall in love with Kerala. Kumate was and is a personal favorite, as it was for Tadao Sato, the great Japanese film critic who loved Aravindan's work as much as we did. We could recognize in the magical Kumati Aravindan's own dream, even more so Setu's dream, of being Kumati or following him, breaking free of the chains by which society binds us all. It was in his art that Aravindan made that dream come true. Another favorite was The Catch, an ostensibly modest, short documentary about the last elephant hunt in India performed in the traditional way, by digging a deep pit, covering it with leaves. In a stroke of genius, Aravindan cuts at the critical moment to an old elephant, tamed many, many years ago. But as Aravindan knew well, having grew up with elephants never forget. That elephant's job was to help get the captured elephant out of the pit. The way Aravindan films this moment, we have no doubt, from the look in the old elephant's eye, that it knows no less profoundly than the filmmaker does what freedom is, what makes it precious, and what it means to lose it. When the study abroad program that year ended, we returned on our own to Trivandrum and pitched a story to Aravindan loosely based on experiences of some of his students, some of our students, he had gotten to know. We would write the screenplay, raise all the money he told us he needed, and bring 7 of the students back to Kerala to more or less play themselves in the film. Aravindan agreed. In writing the screenplay, we kept in mind our understanding that an Aravindan film doesn't need or even want psychologically complex characters. Once a cartoonist, always a cartoonist, perhaps. Nor does it need heavy doses of drama or melodrama. UNNI tells a simple story, and its characters on paper are sketched in very broad strokes. It isn't the way they're written that makes Aravindan's characters deep. They come through to the viewer as vividly as they do because of the special interest he takes in conveying the particular spiritual depth he finds in each of the flesh and blood people whom he makes his camera subjects. We assumed that Aravindan would want to flesh out the Indian characters, especially UNNI, the young man the protagonist Tara befriends, and with whom perhaps she falls in love. But as it turned out, he had no inclination to do that. And Aravindan was right about that, since it isn't UNNI as he really is, but UNNI as Tara envisions him, that Aravindan undertakes to capture with the camera. And Tara herself, given far more screen time, remains almost as unknowable to us, for she is a mystery to herself. It's her attunement to the mystery of nature that surrounds her that I think interested Aravindan, as it motivated his alter ego in the film, the character played by Setu, who combines Kumati's mischievousness and command of magic with the profound wisdom of Aravindan's soulmate, the old elephant. It's what motivated the Setu character to single her out. UNNI is set in Kerala, but we wrote it as a story about Americans. And Aravindan chose to film in what he thought of as the American style, using such cinematic devices as shooting and editing, some conversation in Hollywood shot, reverse shot form, and employing camera movement much more sparingly than in some of his other films. I think he accepted our invitation because he embraced the challenge of making UNNI an American story as we'd written it. At the same time, of course, he wanted it to be a true Aravindan film. He succeeded on both counts.
I knew you would come one of these days.
Sometime after the film was finished, we saw Aravindan one more time in New York, where the Asia Society was paying tribute to his work. At that time, he made it clear to us that he was proud of UNNI. He had good reason to be. Of course, Kitty and I are really sorry that we couldn't return to Kerala for this wonderful event. I'm speaking these words, as I said, from our backyard in Miami, the only place in the United States, not counting Hawaii, that looks like Kerala and is as hot as Kerala, and as you may have noticed, has Kerala-like mosquitoes. But we're half a world away from Setu, from Sonny Joseph, from Shaji, from Adur, and from other old friends we still miss after all these years, who are gathered to honor Aravindan, a great man as well as a great artist, who died much too young, but whose work will forever live on. I hope you enjoy UNNI. Please, I hope you're at least charitable. We're perfectly aware of problems that it still has. Most important one being that Aravindan was never interested in fleshing out the character of UNNI. But we've always felt, and we feel that way more than ever now, that what's valuable about the film is much more important than its imperfections. And actually, this re-edited version of the film is truer to the Aravindan spirit than the version that he edited. Because, as I said, he felt that he needed to edit it the way he thought we wanted it to be. So it was a great adventure.